Begin the current Daf Masechtas Bava Kama Daf Ayin Ches. Begin 9 lines down at the top of the Amud. We're in the middle of a Gemara's discussion, and that is we jumped from thing to thing, and that's where we ended up where we are right now. The Gemara was discussing the machlekes regarding Reb Shimon. In his opinion, we know that he holds that a shchita she'eino ruya lo yishma shchita. So if you steal a treifa animal and you slaughter it, right? There's two ways to get a chiv dal b'hei, either slaughtering it or selling it. So if you slaughter it, so that's clear according to Rabbi Shimon, you're not going to be chayav dal b'hei because that's a shchita she'eino ruya. So it's lo yishma shchita. You didn't do quote unquote a shchita. The machlekes between Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg was what happens if you do a mechira? If you do, that's why. If you do a sale, if you sell the animal that's a treifa. So that was the machlekes. Supposed to be given because of Barakam. So that's the machlekes they have regarding do we compare the tvicha to the mechira or not? On that we have the machlekes regarding do you say that just like the tvicha can't be by a treifa because it's shchita she'eino ruya, would you say the same thing regarding the mechira? Now the Gemara, however, asked. Rabbi Yechanan brought a the Gemara. The Rabbi Yechanan asked Rish Lakish from a brisa, just showing how we got to where we are right now. That if someone stole klayim and he slaughtered it and treifa and he sold it, so he say he pays dal v'hei. So the Gemara attempted to bring a raya and say, it's Reb Shimon. That's why you're saying specifically by the case of treifa a mechira, because if it was a shchita, of course you wouldn't be chayiv. And you see that even though it's less betvicha, it's a mechira. Others said no, it's rabbanon. If it's rabbanon, then why would you say that? So the Gemara answered, because we said one by one, one by the other. Fine. But then the Gemara wanted to introduce the brisa of the case of treifa mechara. It discussed the other case of the brisa. So again, just showing how we ended up over here. It's not really the primary reason. We brought in the brisa for the case of treifa umachra. The first case was klayim v'tavcha. So he's saying that if you have a klayim v'tavcha, you're going to pay dal v'hei. On that, the Gemara says, really? Klayim, which is a mixed breed, you're going to be chayav dal v'hei? But in the Torah, when it talks about the halach of dal v'hei, it mentions seh. And Rava says it's a binyan av, wherever it says seh in the Torah, it's only to be hoitzi as a klayim excludes klayim. So the Gemara says here it's different because it says oi. Oi is marba klayim. The Gemara says, really? Is every oi marba klayim? We have halacha by what's kosher for carbon says shur oi chesed, and the oi there is actually is excluding klayim. So Rabbi says it depends on the context. Depends what we would have thought without the word oi. Now that you tell me oi is going to be including or going to be excluding. Now that's where the Gemara is up to at this point, and the Gemara is going to discuss this teaching of Rava that seh is being moitzi klayim. The Gemara say, okay, now that the dust settled and we figured out the dust settled, now we figured out exactly what oi means in the context of tficha mechira, what oi means in the context of what's kosher carbon. So where do you actually find seh being moitzi klayim? What is the teaching actually teaching for? Where do we find an application of that halacha? That's what we're up to right now. Should corresponds because in Cheskel turn to today's daf should be schutz b'chem b'nei Yisrael and that's Yisrael throughout the entire world. Some of these discussed in today's daf are, like we said, this concept of kamokim shneim seh. Wherever it says seh in Elohitzi Seklayim is only coming to exclude. So if you're saying seh, you're saying a pure, as we brought from Rashi in Mesechtes Chulin. Some of us have on the side that because it says seh ksavim seh izim, that it means to say it has to be only the tata and the mama has to be kvasim, tata and mama has to be izim, it has to be pure. That's what it says teaching us. And the Gemara is going to ask, what's the application of the halacha? The Gemara brings us a pet chamor that in paidim chulu, it's going to tell us certain things that we know the firstborn donkey has to be redeemed with a shepsela, and if not, you have to decapitate it. And the Gemara is going to tell us certain types of sheep that cannot be used as the paidim pet chamor. The Gemara has a very interesting case. That's one of the pshatim of what actually the halacha of klayim is coming to tell us. Of tamei is a code word for a non-kosher animal. Shenoyle min atar, which is born from a kosher animal. Vibure min atamei, but it was impregnated from a non-kosher animal. And we're going to qualify what exactly do we mean when we say a non-kosher animal. Also, the Gemara discusses, so we're discussing here in Perek Meruba, the halachas of kefil and dal v'hei. So the halacha we know is with tevacha. It has to be that you totally slaughter the thing be'isser. The question is, a mecharai, also if you sell it, chutz me'echad me'meir shabai. Let's say you didn't totally sell it. There's 1/100th that you left. What would the halacha be? Or let's say shoyis l'bay shutfis, which the Gemara is going to make differentiations regarding if there's a partnership. Well, then you didn't do totally the isser yourself. The Gemara discusses what does it mean 100 that you're leaving out? What are you leaving out? It might be critical if you're leaving out the ear or the horns or a critical part of the animal to say if that's considered not having totally sold the animal. Shutfin shagambu regarding if partners together still, not it wasn't one person. And finally, chutz me'ubramahu, what's the halacha if let's say you sell the animal, but besides for the fetus, is that also leaving out part of the animal that you didn't have a mechara kuli, you didn't totally sell the animal. So begin the current daf Ayin Ches. 9 lines down at the top of the Amud, we had quoted Rav in the previous daf. Kamakam shenemar seh, wherever it says in the Torah seh, ein Elohim, it says a climb. Why is it saying the word seh? It says ksavim, it says izim. Why is it they say ksavim, seh, izim? The word seh is coming to say that it's excluding a hybrid animal born from two different species. So that's where the Gemara begins. This Rava said, Zebana, this is a building block. Whenever it says in the Torah, and Elohim is coming to exclude a mixed breed, what halach is coming to teach us? As the Gemara explains, what it cannot be teaching us, which certain contexts it says the word seh, but it cannot be teaching me over there that it's coming to exclude klayim. Why? So the Gemara explains. If it's to tell me that a mixed breed, a hybrid animal will be possible for a carbon, because it says seh by the nedavis. In Parshas Nesachim and Bamidbar Tezvav, it says oily seh bekvasim. So it says by the karbanis the word seh. Oh, maybe that's where it's teaching me. Rabbi's principle has an application by karbanis to tell me it cannot be hybrid. No, that can't be that you're learning out from the word seh, because mehedik sibhu. The Torah explicitly says, and we mentioned this in the previous daf, shiur oy chesev. Now, from the ribui of oy chesev, we learn that prat leklayim. It's excluding klayim that is going to be possible. That was what we learned on the top of this amud from the previous daf, that we exclude klayim from shoyrei chesev. So I already know to exclude klayim. And we learned exactly how we know that. If the sefer is coming to exclude, the reish is also coming to exclude. We're excluding nidma, we're excluding klayim. So we already know it from a different source. You don't need it from the word seh. Okay. And ila meiser, if you're going to say it's regarding the context of meiser behema, the halacha is every 10th animal that's born has to be given it has to be brought as a carbon of meiser behema. Now, although Rashi says it doesn't say seh by meiser behema, it says only tzayin. Still, Rav is saying that it's going to be possible. The problem is, the Gemara in Bechayros tells us regarding many things we learn out, tachas. It says by ma'aseh behema tachas hashevet that the animal has to go beneath the stick, and the 10th one gets branded with his red dye. And it says by kadshim that tachas imai, it should be under its mother till 8 days, and only then can it be brought as a carbon. So we already have a gzeir shava, and for this halacha also we learned it out to tell us that it's going to be possible. Because says the Gemara, tachas yalaf mikadashim. We already have this gzeira shava that you learn now ma'aseh behema from kadashim, and we just said from kadashim that we know it's possible by klayim. That we know from shoyrei chesev. So ma'aseh behema I already know also without the word seh from gzeira shava from kadashim. So I wouldn't need the word seh, even though it doesn't even say seh, it says sign, to learn out from kadashim. And ila b'char, and if it's for the halacha of the firstborn animal that it's also a carbon. To say, oh, but if it's a hybrid, it's going to be possible, and it says the word seh, and that's how I'll know it. No, because avara yalaf mimaiser. I already have a gzeira shava. It says in Shmos Yud Gimel for this week parasha bavarta kol pet terechem laHashem that they use the firstborn animal, and it says in Mikra Chav Zayin b'chol hashayaver tachas hashevet by ma'aseh behema. So just like ma'aseh behema, I just said you learn that from kadashim that it's possible a klayim. So I would know already b'chor that it's possible for klayim. Or inami, another approach I would know b'chor already from that I don't need to learn that from the word seh, because nidma amar taloi. The lesser psul of nidma, which is that it's actually born from same species parents, it just looks like a different creature. And still the Torah says even that's not valid for a Bechor. The Chsavak says the Pasuk Midbar says Ach Bechor Shar. Only the firstborn of an ox, meaning Achi Yehu Shar Ubechor Shar. It has to be that the animal that's giving birth is an ox, and its firstborn is an ox. So means to say it can't look like something else. So climate boy, do I have to tell you that a mixed breed, which is more of a psul, is going to be invalid by Bechor? So again, I don't need Seh to teach me that it's not valid a hybrid by Bechor, because I learned the Havavra from Meiser. I don't need to teach Meiser because I learned that Tachas Tachas Mekachim, and I don't need to teach Mekachim because I learned that Shar Chesed Bayez, which is part of the claim. So what is the application for this klal of Rabbi? Say wherever the Torah says you can learn this out. Where do you need this teaching for? Where is it the application of that I need to know from the word seh to loitzi as a climb? Says when was Rabbi's teaching said it's pigeon, like Rashi has pet chamar, regarding the redemption of the firstborn donkey. The Torah tells us that you have to redeem that with a seh. Oh, Rabbi's coming to teach us that the reasoning of the Mishnah that's saying that you cannot redeem with Klein that we're going to quote right now is from Rabbi's teaching, because it says in the Torah seh, not like we learned in the Mishnah B'chayris. There's a few things you cannot use to redeem the firstborn donkey. Ein point you cannot redeem it loy be'egel, not with a calf, loy b'chaya, not with a wild animal, a deer or hart, loy b'shchuta, not with a slaughtered sheep, because that's not called seh, loy b'treifa, not if it has a mortal defect, v'loy b'klayim. That's the case we wanted over here. So where do you know this halacha from? That's learned out from the word seh, from Rabbi's teaching. It cannot be from two species. V'loy b'koi. Koi is a klayim is two types of behemoths. Koi is from a behemoth and the chaya together. Okay, so that's one approach. That what it's coming to teach me for. It's for this klal that we have that you cannot use klayim by petach hamar. But says the Gemara, the mata b'klayim. According to Rabbi Lazar, actually says that no, you actually could use a hybrid animal to redeem the firstborn donkey. Not like we learned in that Mishnah within B'chayris. It says Rabbi Lazar mata b'klayim. He actually permits a hybrid animal. Neshu said he holds no, it is a sheep. So then you're back to the question of my hilchas, what halachic purposes is Rabbi's teaching of seh? It cannot be teaching me that taloitz is a climb by pidyon petach hamar, because Rabbi Lazar holds that would be valid. So Amar Lacha, Rabbi Lazar would tell you, Kiyidma de Rava, when was Rabbi's teaching said? L'tamei shenoilid min hatar. What does that mean? So it doesn't mean like halachas of tumah, of ritually impure. It means a non-kosher animal that was born from a kosher animal. So a cow gave birth to a horse, v'ibure min hatame, and the father of the horse was also a horse, meaning a horse impregnated a cow, giving birth to a horse. Or another case Rashi says is, let's say a ewe, which is a rachel, a female sheep, gave birth to a chazir, to a swine, and the father of that swine was also a swine. That child is forbidden, that baby is forbidden to be eaten. Because it says in the Torah, Zoysa behema asher techelu, this is the animal you should eat. Shur seh kesavim. Now, since it says seh, it's coming to teach us excluding klayim in such a case, where it is a mixed breed, is telling us that the child, although the mother is a kosher animal, the child cannot be eaten as an animal. Now, the Gemara just points out, this is not like Rabbi Yeshua in the first parak of B'chayz Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, that he agrees to this halacha, but he learns it out from somewhere else. The Rabbi Yeshua, because if you like Rabbi Yeshua, so miseh chesavim v'seh izim nafkele. It says in the Torah in Devarim Yudalad, this is the animal that you should eat. An ox, say chesavim, say izim. What do you learn from that? Because it says in the plural, from the seh of chesavim, seh of the izim, ashe aviv keves ve'ima kibsa, that both parents have to be a sheep. Okay, so he would know that from that pasuk. So obviously, if you're teaching according to Rabbi Lazar, the word seh is coming to teach you loitzes aklayim. It's coming to tell you that if you have this mixed breed parents regarding the kashrus of the child to eat it, that would be not like Rabbi Yeshua, because again, Rabbi Yeshua knows it from a different source. That's how the Gemara wants to say is what says teaching us according to Rabbi Lazar. The question, however, is, could a kosher animal become impregnated from a non-kosher animal that you need to exclude the child that's born from that union? But the Gemara tells us that an animal cannot become impregnated, not a non-kosher animal from a kosher animal, and not a kosher animal from a non-kosher animal. These things don't mix.
You mentioned that's a gestation period.
Right.
Even if the gestation period is the same?
Right, I mean, because if that would be the case, then it wouldn't even need to, because we said that.
A cow and a horse can never have a baby.
Right, that's what the Gemara makes it sound like, that they cannot become impregnated that way. So if that's the case, so how are you telling me that a tamei shenoyle ben atar va'aviv tamei, that's the case of a mixed breed, and that's what says teach me that child's not going to be kosher? That's not even ever possible to have to exclude it. Someone says, yes, there is a case, but a very interesting case. The Kaimalan, we hold, as we continue to Tamid Beis, the Aber Mikolut, that it could become impregnated from the uncloven hoof, meaning we know a kosher.
No, you have to have a kosher farm. Yeah.
No, but we're saying it cannot be born from a non. Oh, so that's right. So that's, yeah. I mean, you have to say this by all.
In the wild.
You have to know.
It happened in the wild.
But what's this case? This case is kalut, is that its hooves are not cloven. So meaning it's supposed to be split. It's not. Now, it was born from a kosher animal, which is Reb Shimon. What does that mean? Reb Shimon calls such an animal, quote unquote, tamei, meaning not kosher. As the Bryce citation B'charis Davam Beis, Reb Shimon says 2 times in the Torah Gamal, a camel. Why are you saying it 2 times? One is a camel that's born from a camel. Great, that's your regular camel. Then there's quote unquote a camel that's born from a cow. Now, even if it was impregnated from a kosher animal, meaning from a regular shiur, this para and the shiur, both parents were regular, because obviously we said they can't be born from a non-kosher animal. Both parents were regular cow family. The child that's quote unquote this gamal, that's a camel, Rabbi Shimon says is forbidden, which Rabbi Shua, which we quote on Amid Aleph, disagrees with him. He says that where it's born from a kosher animal, meaning it always has to be a kosher animal, meaning from an ox that is not colored, meaning that is cloven hooves, and he permits that if it has at least one sign of kashrus, either it's malagera, it chews its cud, or it's mafres parsa, has split hooves. And he darshans, it says, this you should not eat, es hagamal, the camel, which teaches like this. This you cannot eat when it has one siman. But there is another animal that you could eat if it has one siman. So it's a little bit of a complex cheshbon. But we know that there are certain animals that are not kosher, because even though it has one of the 2 simanim, it doesn't have both signs of a kosher animal. So this camel you cannot eat. But there is another one that has one of the simanim that you could eat, which is a tamei, quote unquote, that's born from a tahar, and it's iburim in a tahar, meaning both parents, the father and the mother, were kosher animals, but the child is, quote unquote, a non-kosher animal, because it's missing one of the 2 signs. That's this tamei, hanoilid min hataha. Now, you would think the same thing would be even if it was impregnated from a non-kosher animal. In other words, just like I'm validating by this animal, meaning this baby that's born with only one of the 2 signs, so to I'll validate by his son. If this tamei, it's a little bit of a cheshbon, this tamei animal, there's no tamei and tar impregnating each other, but there's a tamei animal that we're calling it tamei because its father and mother were regular cows, but it was born with one sign. So that's the case that we're calling it tamei, because it's before that, but before the case, before the Torah says gamal 2 times to tell us you could have this gamal, so to speak, because it has one sign of kashrus that's born from a para, Rabbi Shimon holds that it's forbidden. This is a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Shimon says no, it's a kosher animal. That's the case of a tamei shenol min tahor. That if aviv is not tamei, if aviv is tahor, he holds it is a kosher animal. Now, Rabbi Shimon again, and that's who going like says no, that's like a tamei animal. It's like a non-kosher. It's like a gamal. So you would think that just like I'm validating this child, that you would validate also the child of this animal. No, it says this is all Rabbi Yeshua. So on that Torah it says sechsavim sa'izim until it's born from two kavasim. That the father and mother has to be kavasim. Now, this psul of benoi, meaning of the child of this tamei, that Yeshua learns out from kavasim, as we just quote on Omen Aleph, Rava learns out, and this would be pertinent for Reb Shimon who disagrees, from Seh, that Kalayim is the case of a Tameh and a Tahar. Like we're saying, what's Tameh? Tameh is that it has one sign, and according to Reb Shimon, that's how you would know that that child that's born is going to be forbidden because it's a Kalayim. How's it a Kalayim? Because it's a Tameh and a Tahar. I Tameh cannot become pregnant from a Tahar. It doesn't mean a real Tameh. It's a regular cow. It's just missing one of the two signs. It's either not malagera or it's either not, like the Gemara says, it's not colored. I mean it is colored. It's close. So
Obviously, it's just because the father and mother.
no, we're saying no. This is the case. No, the child could be a regular. It could be a regular cow, but it's born as a mixed as from a hybrid from these two different types of animals. Saying that's not going to be kosher to be eaten. That's what says coming to. So it's a very interesting case of what we're calling this hybrid animal is what the source is for Rebbe Lazar. We were trying to find a source for Rebbe Lazar. What is so? I mean, we at first said it's excluding the case of Klayim for Pinyan Pet Chamar. According to Rebbe Lazar, holds you that Klayim is good for Pinyan Pet Chamar. So what is Rebbe's teaching coming to teach us? So it says coming to teach us that a hybrid animal, if it's kosher or not like Rabbi Yeshua, because Rabbi Yeshua knows that teaching from Sechsavim Sa'izim. And for Reb Shimon, we would know this from Seh, but then the Gemara said, I don't understand the case in the first place. How are you excluding a Tahar and a Tameh, but they cannot have a child together? It's saying it's not really a Tahar and a Tameh. It's this Tameh, like pseudo Tameh, which is like its parents were regular cows, but it is born with one sign. That's a Machlekes Reb Yeshua and Reb Shimon, its status. And Reb Shimon holds that that's considered as forbidden. And Yeshua holds that no, he holds that it actually is going to be kosher. It's just the child of that one that he learns out from a Sechasavim Sa'izim is not going to be okay. But where does Reb Shimon know that from? He's going to know that from the word Seh. So that's the source according to Rabbi Lazar. Right, because it's a mixed breed. No, Reb Shimon. Who? Reb Shua? Reb Shimon. Oh, Reb Shua? Yeah, Reb Shua says because it's not. He says that from Sechasavim Chvasim has to be both the father and the mother have to be Chvasim, and it's not.
Even though he's kosher.
Yes. Yeah, that's what Rashi brings. That you would think Shem Shani Machsheb Boy, just like I'm validating this. Because of Gamal two times. I mean, not Gamal two times, because it says only Ezelu Teichelu es Gamal, but there is a different type of camel that you could eat. You think I'm also going to validate the child of that animal? No, that's Kesavim, Izim, to say that both have to be the same, and this one wouldn't be valid. That Pasul of Benoi, that Rabbi Shua learns out from Chavasim, Rava's teaching of Seh would be valid for Rabbi Shimon. Now the Gemara goes back to what we mentioned on Ayin Dalet on the base, because if you would follow, we were jumping, and once we mentioned something, we went to something else. Now we're going back to Ayin Dalet on the base regarding that we were talking about a Ganev as it applies to Kodshim, that is Chayiv and Achrayis. So by Rava has the following question: Hadei alai oila. If someone says, okay, look, I take it upon me a neder, I'm going to bring an oila. Okay, for sure. He separates an ox and he's ready to go ahead and bring it as a carbon. If someone else comes and steals that shar, me pater ganav nafshe, could the thief let himself off the hook to exempt him regarding the owner? Bekeves l'Rabbanan, meaning according to the Rabbanan, who, as we're going to quote in a second, they're teaching that he could tell the owner, he said, look, you obligated yourself to the Beis HaMikdash, to Hashem, to bring an oila. I'll give you back an oila. I'm not causing you any loss, because although you did a shar, and I'm giving you back a keves, which is a much smaller animal, but lamaisa, you're yotzi your neder. So would that be valid? And according to Belezer ben Azariah, you could even ask a bigger question. How about giving just a bird? Because now we learned the machlekes in Menachos, what's valid in the minimum of an oila. Someone says harei oila. So the Tanna Kama says you have a keves, you got to bring a lamb. Now you can bring an ox, but the minimum you got to bring a lamb. So that was the question we said. According to the Rabbanan, could you give him back a lamb? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says no. Actually, you have a tar ben yaina. You could even bring a turtle dove or a young pigeon. So again, Samai, what's the halacha? Do we say shem oila kibul alabei? That what did the owner that you stole the carbon from? He accepted upon himself an oila, and you're giving him back an oila. Maybe you could tell the ganav, no, I know mitzvah in the mufchabin but I wanted to do a choice mitzvah. I was bringing a shire, an ox, and you give him back what? Some bird, some shepsela? That's not what you stole from me. So what's the halacha? Says the Gemara, Basa di ba yahad pashta. After he asked the question, Rava, he resolved it. Ganav potter atzmai, the thief could exempt himself. But keves l'chabana, according to Rabbanan, with a sheep, and with the bird oila, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Why is that? Because he is obligated to pay back to the owner, and the owner is being gate to his chiv of his neder, and the loss of hektish, he's off the hook from. Why? Because the Torah tells us we're going to be base ish, v'lo base hektish. And Rashi Morava points out that this is going according to Rabbi Shimon, that says kachim that you chayiv ba'achriyus and you can be chayiv, because if you don't like Rabbi Shimon, then you're not chayiv anything. Because hektish you don't owe to, because it says we're going to base ish, and to the guy you don't owe anything because it's not yours. It's not we're going to base ish. Rabbi Shimon said it is considered when it's chayiv ba'achriyus, it is considered we're going to base ish. So I do have to pay you back, but what do I have to pay you back? Not your shar. I have to only pay you back what would be your obligation of your neder. And this machlekes Rabban and Rabbi Elazar and their rationale of like the oila sa'if or the keves, that's explained in the last parak, Mesechus Menachos. But upon him, he said that's enough. And the Gemara says he explicitly learned this, that Omar Rava said straight up. Someone says, I take upon myself to bring an oila, a total burnt sacrifice, and he separates an ox. Someone else comes along and steals it. According to Rabbanan, the ganav could let himself off the hook with a shepsela. According to the Belezer Mazariah, enough with the bird oila, that he was clear on this halacha that is going to be enough. Now, Taisa says the whole question the Gemara had was, would the ganav be able to let himself off the hook? Says if the guy himself who took the neder, it's obvious that he could be mitzi himself if he doesn't want to do mitzvah and the muvcha. The question was, regarding the ganav himself, that this guy did separate the mitzvah and the muvcha, would he be responsible for him or not? I can look at the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme of those that are exempt from Dalad Vehei, which we spoke about in the previous Mishnayos, regarding who's chayiv, who's pater. So now the Gemara brings other cases that you'd be pater. So let's say someone violated this halacha, he stole, and then he sold it. But 1/100th of the animal is not included in the sale. Or that before he stole this item, he already had a partnership in this item. So then, like Rashi tells us, that wouldn't be qualified for a macharai, because just like we say, tavacha has to be totally a slaughtering, macharai has to be totally be'isser, and you're not doing that because you already own some of it. Or hasheichet, let's say the case of not mechira, but let's say of slaughtering. Hasheichet, someone slaughtered in this nabla b'yadai, and it became an avela in his possession. Or let's say hanoicher, he tore it from its nostrils down to its heart. Or v'ma'aker, he just tore out the simanim, the pipes, the windpipe and the food pipe. He didn't do a shchita. So Misham Teshum Kefil, he's going to pay Kefil because he was caught with the stolen item. But the Ein Misham Teshum V'chamisha, all these cases you're not going to pay Dalad V'hei. Even according to Rabbanan, And this is what we said, that, someone wanted to know, shchita, according to Rabbi Shimon, shchita shenaruya, you said, this is not a shchita at all. Everyone agrees it has to be utavacha is shchita teira. This, by ripping out the pipes, killing it, is not going to be chayiv dal v'hei. It's only a shchita, and that's where Rabbi Shimon goes even further. He says, even if you do a ma'aser shchita, but if it doesn't have a din shchita, it doesn't have the what's matter shchita, then even according to Rabbi Shimon, even that's not going to be chayiv dal v'hei. So now the Gemara explains the first halacha of the Mishnah. We said that you chayiv if you sell the animal dal v'hei, but if you say except 100th, then you didn't sell the whole animal. You're not going to be chayiv. Says the Gemara, "My chutz me'echad me'eshbeh." What does it mean? In other words, what are we saying? If you leave it over, is considered like you left over in the animal, and it wasn't a full sale. So it's actually not so pasha. Actually, many different opinions. Amar Rav says, "Chutz midav haniter imay b'shchita." It has to be leaving out something that is permitted when you slaughter the animal. For example, let's say the flesh. But if you leave over the skin, or the horns, or the wool, that's not considered leaving over any part of the animal. If you left it out, that would still be a violation of umachare. It has to be something that is being permitted. I think Gemara will explain shortly the reasoning for this opinion. It has to be something that is permitted when you slaughter it, which you can't have. You can't have benefit before you slaughter. You can have hana from the skin. You can't eat the meat. That's something that's going to be required if you want it to be an exemption from the mechira. Another interpretation, Valevi Amar, he says, even chutz migizoi seha. He said, even except for the shearings of the wool, even that would be enough of if you're leaving it out, then you'd be exempt from the mechira. And we also learned this in the Brisa, chutz migizoi seha, except for the shearings of the wool. However, the Gemara asks on Rav from the following Brisa. So this is machlekes Amar Rav and Levi. But now we have a Brisa. The Brisa says, Machar chutz miyadav, let's say you sell the animal except for its hand, chutz midaga except for its foot, chutz mikarna except for its horn, chutz mikizeh except for the shearings of wool. Any one of these, you're not going to pay dal v'hei if you leave out any of these things, which again is clearly not like Rav, because it's saying all these things like gizei seha, which not the wool is permitted without shchita. Rav says to be something that's need to be shchita. So that's like clearly like Levi, but not like Rav. That's opinion number one. Now there's another opinion in the Brisa, which is also not like him. Rabbi Shloimy, he says, it's dava hamakiv b'shchita. Something that's critical with the slaughtering, meaning something that if it was taken from the animal, it would become a nevela when it's alive, and you wouldn't be able to do shchita. For example, let's say you took out the food pipe, or the windpipe, or the thigh, or the cavity inside of it, or the liver, or one of its intestines, which then shchita is not going to permit the animal. That, if you leave that out from the sale, you're not going to pay dal v'hei. But let's say the hand or the foot from the knee and down, which is not critical for the animal, so it's not going to withhold the validity of the shchita. Then you will pay 4 or 5 times the amount. And again, the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning for all these opinions shortly, but we're just showing that again, this is also not like Rav. And the third opinion, Shimon ben Lazar, he says, let's say you sell chutz mikarna except for its horn. Even that is enough not to pay 4 or 5 times the amount. Now, chutz migizei seha, except for the shearings of the wool, this is where he disagrees with the Tanna Kama. That's not enough. That's not enough to exclude. You'll pay 4 or 5 times the amount. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Shloimy Levi, we understand according to Levi, Tanna Kama. He's exactly like the Tanna Kama, which Levi said, even if you leave out the shearings of the wool, it's considered enough of an exemption. That's what the Tanna Kama said. But El Rav, come on, who's Rav like? Because if he's like the Tanna Kama, he said even if you leave out the shearings of the wool, it's going to be an exemption. And again, that's not something that's niter imay b'shchita. And if it's like Rabbi said that even the hand wouldn't be an exemption, which according to Rav, that's something that's permitted with the shchita. It's not ma'akiv in the shchita, the wording that Rabbi used, but it's niter imay b'shchita. And according to Rav, that should be something that would be an exemption. And it's also not like Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, because he said that even chutz mikarna is not going to pay dal v'hei, which according to Rav, that's not something that's niter imay b'shchita. So we have 3 Tanoim, and none of them seem to be like Rav. Some of they said Rav Damakiai Tana. Rav is like a 4th opinion that's brought the Tanya in a different brisa. Shimon Lazar, he says, Macher chutz miyada. If let's say someone sells the animal except for its hand, chutz miraga except for its foot, In Masham Tashma Bachamisha, you're not going to be dalvehei. Again, that fits into Rav's principle because any part of the animal that's the part of its limbs is something that's permitted with slaughtering. So that's going to be if you leave it out, exempt you. Chutz mikarna, except for its horns, or chutz mikizeh, except for the shearings of the wool, which is not something that's permitted with the shechita. You pay 4 or 5 times the so that's like Rav. So Rav is like this fourth Tana. Says the Gemara, okay, we have 4 different opinions. What exactly are they disagreeing about in their opinions? So the Gemara explains the source for their opinions. Tana Kamasaba, the first Tana held, when it says in the Torah, utavachai, we've mentioned this many times in the past, means kuloi be'inon. You need to have the entire animal being slaughtered in Isser to be chai. Now, umachachai, kuloi be'inon. When you sell it, has to be also the entire thing. So therefore, what that means to say is, says the Tana Kama, your tavicha or mechira has to include the whole thing. If you're leaving out anything, I don't care if it's the gizay seha, I don't know if they would carry their seha, any one of these leaving out is not a full sale. That's the source of the Tana Kama. That's why he holds any one of these things would be considered as an exemption from the halach. That's opinion number 1. That was the opinion of Levi, and that's the opinion of the Tana Kama. The Rabbi Saba, the second opinion, he held, no. Utavachai, when it says utavachai, is mididah betvicha. It's something that is applicable to there's 2 ways of understanding it. You could say mechira kulei and tvicha kulei, or you could say compare the mechira kulei to the tvicha kulei. When it says utavachai, it's something that applies to slaughtering. Afuka mididlah betvicha, which excludes something that has no shaykhis to slaughtering, right? Because the hair on the body, that wool has nothing to do with tvicha. You can have it even before you slaughter animal. So we're comparing the selling similar to what's by the slaughtering. Whatever is not needed by the slaughtering would not be necessary by the selling either. And therefore, that would not be a shiur, a leaving over. So therefore, that's why Rebbe held, and he said that only something that's ma'akev in the shechita has to be something that is sold. And there's not ma'akev in the shechita. It's not included in the tevachei kula. It's not included in the machachei kula either. Now, the third opinion, Shimon ben Elazar, that didn't darshan comparing the selling to the slaughtering, but Sava, he held, Karna, what was he differentiating? He said that yes, if you leave out the horn, you're not going to pay dal v'hei. If you leave out the shearings of the wool, you will pay dal v'hei. What's the difference? What's that source? Because he holds Karna, the horn, the loyla migzakaime. The horn is not destined to be cut off. Have a shear. If you leave it out from the sale, it's leaving out part of the animal. So therefore, in Masham Teshuma B'Chamishin, I can pay 4 or 5 times the amount. On the other hand, Gizei Seah, the wool, the Lemegas Kaimi, that's what animals are used for. That's where we have all our clothing from. Is meant to be cut off. Lo have a shear. That's not leaving over the animal itself. Masham Teshuma B'Chamishin, you pay dal v'hei. So that was the 3 opinions in the Brisa. Then the 4th opinion, which was what we said is like Rav, which is the Idach Tan Rabbi Shloimy ben Elazar Saba, the other Brisa of other Tana that's of the Yeshiva Rabbi Shloimy ben Elazar, he held that Yada Viragla, of the hands and the feet, the tzricha that need slaughtering to permit it, have a shear, that's considered leaving it over. And therefore, you're not going to pay 4 or 5 times the amount if you leave that out. On the other hand, Karneha begizah seha, the horns and the shearings of the wool, that doesn't need slaughtering, a different way of learning utavachai, that doesn't need slaughtering, lo have a shear is not considered as leaving over. Fine. So that was the 4 different opinions. But the Gemara says, but that's a steer because the 3rd opinion in the first brayso was of Shimon Lazar, who said there's a difference between Karna and Gizah Seha. And then we have the 4th opinion, which is a different brayso, but it's also from Shimon Lazar, that says that no, neither Karna and Gizah Seha are included. It's only things like Yad and Ragla. Says the Gemara, there's 2 different Tanoic opinions according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. So the Gemara is talking about the important meanings of brayso in the related discussion. Hagoyin of Hakitas. Someone steals a amputee animal, or vesachigeres, a lame animal, or vesasuma, or a blind animal. Now, although you don't have the entire animal, you're still going to be chayiv in these cases because whatever you stole, you totally sold. So even though it's missing part of the body, ultimately you're still selling the whole animal. And so if you steal an animal of partners, chayiv, you're going to be liable. And then it says v'shutfim sheganvu, and if partners steal, beturim, they're exempt. Those are the different halachas again. So that's the chiddush in kitas chegeres esuma. Even though it's missing part of it, but you sold the whole thing that you stole. So too, if you steal an animal owned by partners, that's not an exemption. You still chayiv. But partners that steal, they're exempt.
Where do you know that, partners?
Why would you say not?
Again, what's the pasuk we learn?
V'gunim mibesa ish. So I guess the chiddush is saying that's right. I guess that's the chiddush. That's still going to be considered as if you're stealing from a base ish, and that the fact that you're stealing from partners, which we're actually going to see in a moment, but now we're saying b'shutrim shegambu, that partners that steal are going to be pater. That's what the Gemara asks on Vayva. Partners that steal are chayiv. So Rav Nachman says loikash, not difficulty. Why? When did we say that partners that steal are going to be pater from Dalad V'Hei? Is when we say partners steal from each other. So even the part that he stole from his partner, you're going to be pater because there's no tavachai kula b'yisucha, because it's partly yours. When did we say kan? When did we say that they're going to be chayiv? Is b'shut if shegon me'alma. When partners steal from elsewhere, then they're going to be chayiv. However, the Gemara asks on that. That's Rav Nachman just gave this answer. Rav asked from the following brisa. The brisa says, you would think that when a partner steals from his other partner, or v'shutvin shegan, when partners steal, you would think and that they would be liable. Tamalim, it says in the Torah, no, b'tvachai, and he slaughters it. Kula be'inan. You need to have that the total slaughtering was done be'isr. But lekin, you don't have that. So you see that partners that steal are going to be pater. So how are you telling me that when partners steal me'alma, that they're chayiv, you see that they're pater? So Elam Rav Nachman rather he says, no, you're right, a different answer. Loikash, not difficult. Kan b'shutiv shetavach ladas chaveirei. When partners stole, and then one of the partners goes and slaughters it, the two of them are going to be responsible for the dalad v'hei, because you do have a tavachei kula b'chiyuva, because the one who's slaughtering is liable for his portion, and his partner also made him a shliach. And we already said in Daf Yomi and Aleph that although generally we say in shlich d'avera, here by the loch of dalad v'hei, we do say the shlich d'avera because we said tachas is l'rabas is a shliach. So therefore, when partners steal and one is doing it with the consent of the other one, then you'll be chayiv. When did we say the shutf and shiganda are going to be pater? When one partner does it without the consent of the other partner, then it's going to be exempt because you don't have utavachai, you don't have a total isser of the slaughtering because the half of his friend, he wasn't the agent. So it's like tevech u'moicher acher haganav. It's like you're slaughtering from a ganav that you're going to be pater, and even for his, because you're stealing from him, and even his own portion is going to be pater, because since you don't have a total tvachei kula b'chiyuva, you're not chayiv at all. I says Rashi, the Gemara told us on Daf Ayin Aleph Amabeis, chamisha bakar, you're chayiv even chamisha chatzoi bakar. So why is he not chayiv for his half of the tvicha? Because you can be chayiv even half a cattle. Says Rashi, no, that's only where a ganav stole from partners, and then he slaughtered it, and then he admitted to one of them for his part. So when he was slaughtering it, it was totally b'chiyuva. That's what the Gemara says. Nagayz later on the Kavav Mabeis that a shutaf that slaughters without the intent of his friend is going to be pater. Here, when we said that you will pay, meaning on Daf Ayin Al, that we said you'll be chayiv chamisha chatzoi bakar, is when you did a total tvachei kula b'isuva, but then you admitted. So it might be knas pater, but you only admitted to one partner, not to the other one. Oh, then we'll say you can be chayvim chamisha chatzoi bakar. But if in the isser itself you only slaughtered half the isser because your partner's half you had no right to slaughter, which is like ta'vach ganav meganav, you're slaughtering from a ganav which you're not chayiv. That's going to be a ganav. Like so, for his part you're not chayiv. So that's only your part, but that's a halfway isser. That's not a tuvachei kula b'isucha b'chiyuva. Therefore, that's the case that you're going to be pater from. Now, by Rabbi Yirmiyah goes back to this halacha of mechira that we said chutz me'echad me'me'eshabay, that then you're not chayiv because you're leaving a part of the mechira. What happens in machar chutz mishleishim yom? What happens if you say, here, I'm selling this to you, except for 30 days I'm going to do my work with it. So it's not a total sale. Well, let's say chutz me'malachta. Let's say he says, look, if you want to slaughter it right away, go ahead and slaughter it. But if any work's going to be done with it, the work is mine. Is that considered a shiur? Or let's say chutz me'ubra. Let's say you say besides for the fetus, it's pregnant. So I'm selling you the whole animal, but I want the baby. What's halacha? So on this last question, the Gemara says, wait, alibin mandam, according to one who says, and this is brought in Chulun Daf Nun Ches, uba yerech imayhu, the fetus is considered the thigh of its mother, which the machlokes in Tamura and the Daf Lamed Aleph. If we say that the fetus is considered like a part of the mother, like the thigh of the mother. So then, like the boy, look, you have no question. Obviously, no shayah, but you're leaving over in the animal itself. It's like one of the limbs of the animal. The whole question is, the question only begins according to one who holds that the fetus is not considered as a thigh of the mother. That would be my what's halacha. In other words, what's the question? I mean, do we say given the mechuba, but ultimately it's connected to the mother? Obviously, the umbilical cord, it's connected. So then, have a shear is considered as leaving over part of the animal? Maybe no. Given the lemifresh minakai, since it's ultimately going to be separated from the animal, lo have a shear, it wouldn't be considered as leaving over. That's one version. Or Ikadam, those say a different version. Even the Labi Yerchima, who since it's not considered as the thigh of the mother, so lo have a shear, it's not considered as leaving over part of the animal, and it is a violation of mechir you'll be chayv dal behay. Maybe no. Given the tzarich l'shtaruya b'hada b'shchita, since that you have to permit the fetus with the slaughtering of the mother, meaning when you slaughter a mother and you find the baby inside, you don't have to slaughter that animal. You can eat the animal as it is. It gets permitted with the mother slaughtering. Oh, so command the shai b'gufa dami. So it's like as if you're leaving over in the body of the mother itself. So it would be a shear. So the Gemara take a let it stand. It's not clear what the halacha would be. One more question. What? Right, but that would still, but for the biblical violation of macharai, that wouldn't be relevant. Another question says the Gemara, Papa, Gonva. What happens if you steal an animal, kata, a very interesting case, and then you go ahead and decapitate or whatever, or cut off a part of the animal, and then you sell it. Now what's halacha? So what's the question? So Gemara explains. Meaning, do we say that the ganav, what was stolen, halei you didn't sell because you cut off part of it, and therefore you won't be chayiv dalad v'hei? Maybe no. That the zavin, what you sold, halei shiur. You didn't leave over anything in what you sold. Take a let it stand. It's not clear what the halacha would be in that case. You'd be chayiv dalad v'hei or not. Thank you to any time.